US Fort Duffield, the mound atop the hill that overlooks Louisville, Kentucky on the southwest side, was a great deterrence to Confederate forces in 1861 and 1862, as it protected the town of West Point, Kentucky, and the supply cache that the Union forces held there. The story of Fort Duffield begins with the arrival of Union troops here in West Point, Kentucky in September of 1861. 4 days later, the 9th Michigan Infantry Volunteers would be the initial settlers of Fort Duffield on October 28, 1861. Ordered by then-commander of the Cumberlands, William Tecumseh Sherman, the 9th Michigan would break land for Fort Duffield on November 3rd to strengthen the Union's grip on the Ohio River Valley. At the time of this fort's construction, this 1,000 feet of earthwork reached a staggering 17 feet tall and allowed for the placement of 10 big guns to overlook the valley below. Over the course of the war, the fort failed to see any conflict, and it's quite easy to see why. The remaining earthworks is imposing to any approaching forces even today, and back in its heyday with the trees cut back and the erosion restored, one could only imagine the citadel on top of the hill that this place once was.
Examining the fort from above reveals just how impressive of a vantage point that this hill yielded to the Union fortress, and it showcases just how important the sightlines of the Ohio River and surrounding valley were to protecting the equipment routes around the city of Louisville. The fort can be seen in its original form by Charles I. Kelly's drawing in 1861. All of the structures that are atop Fort Duffield today are faithful reproductions of what used to be there in the 1860s during the U.S. Civil War. These period-correct structures faithfully depict what a U.S. Civil War camp would look like at that time, minus the troop encampments and whatnot. Colonel William Duffield, the head of the 9th Michigan, deserves some light shed on his story as well, as he is intimately connected to this fort and it bears his father's name. Duffield began his military career serving in the Mexican-American War alongside the 2nd Tennessee Infantry, and would later serve on Gideon J. Pillow's staff, which is notable as Pillow would later on be a Confederate general. Upon the breakout of the Civil War, Duffield would recruit troops in Michigan to form the 3rd Michigan Volunteer Infantry. He would resign from this troop before leaving the state to take a commissioned role as colonel of the 9th Michigan. Duffield would arrive with the 9th Michigan in October of 1861 and aid in the construction of this fort. He would spend little time here, however, as he would be placed in Bardstown only 8 days post-construction. Duffield's deployment would end in July of 1862, where he and his 9th Michigan Volunteers would be defeated by Bedford Forrest in the First Battle of Murfreesboro. Duffield would survive this battle and lead a successful post-bellum career. Although the fort didn't see any conflict, the shining moment of Fort Duffield would not be any battle that it had won, but the respect that it had as an immovable object. Confederate General Braxton Bragg would lead the Army of Tennessee into Kentucky via the L&N Turnpike before turning northeast at Munfordville towards Bardstown, avoiding the heavy fortifications to the west. This deterrence was the purpose of the fort. Excluding the deterrence of General Braxton Bragg's Tennessee Army, throughout 1862, Fort Duffield would primarily see personnel substitutions until it was abandoned in December. It was deemed that this fort would not see challenge.